For Windows users, holding down the Windows button and pressing R will bring up the Run window, where typing this in will bring us up to the roaming location of the Blender installation. And for the purposes of this demo, I will be renaming my folder to be 2.82a, since we're running Blender 2.82. And I'm just going to be running the Steam version of Blender, where it loads up as if it's never been loaded before. So left click, search, save new settings. And we'll go ahead and scale the window to fit inside of the recording area. And with that, we'll click on edit and bring up our preferences. And we're just going to jump straight to add-ons and choose install, jump to C drive tools. And first we'll install the latest hard ops, just because. And after installing that and enabling, we'll go ahead and install the latest boxcutter, which is boxcutter 7.1v. And after enabling boxcutter, you'll see the icon in the side menu, and we are ready to begin. So I'll press Ctrl Alt Spacebar in order to maximize our view, which also gets rid of the top bar. So I'll press Alt W to show up my top bar, and now we're ready to rock. So for the most part, boxcutter hasn't changed. You should just be able to just get in here, draw, turn on snapping, use your snap dots to draw and cut through things. However, with the addition of release lock, things definitely change and get more interesting, because now you can draw and pause and click to just jump to laser cut. And this is a whole different way of approaching things, where if you're using a touchscreen display, it'll definitely become something that's more of a shock, and also hopefully something that you'll become more enthusiastic with. We've tried to improve our behavioral things all around. So for example, if you use a custom cutter, it by default has no cutter set, but if we press C, it sets it as a custom cutter. And so if we put a cube next to this and we draw a custom cutter, you'll notice that now this shape in release lock mode is being drawn into a pause state, where I can just grab this and extrude it. And in addition to being able to scale things, grab things, and rotate things now to assist you with your cutting antics, boxcutter has now been made to be better than ever. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this release. So with boxcutter, drawing a shape, and if you shift to live, you'll see that the origin has always been the default corner that you started off with the draw. However, next to the shape, there's now options to change the origin that's made when you draw a shape. So now you can see here that the origin is set to face center, which will allow us to scale from the face center. We can set it to bounding box center, which will allow us to scale from the bounding box center. We'll bring back that cutter, and you can see that here. And the last option will actually use the origin of the actual object itself. So as you scale it in, you can see that I'm actually scaling it at the object. Origin options can be located here in the top bar, where you can set it up. My favorite is actually face center. However, you can also change it here inside of the DPI. And while we're at it, in the DPI, you can also change if you're using corner or center draw. So for example, if you're wanting to just use center draw, you can do that just like that. And then go here and actually change this to be corner draw again, if that's something that you're more familiar with. Whenever you're drawing a shape, you will now be able to press G to grab. You will also be able to press R to rotate. During rotation, you can press X, Y, or Z in order to move the shape further, in addition to being able to use dots to adjust it after the fact. Based on your origin, you can press S to scale, and it will scale from where you decided. In this case, I'm scaling from the face center. However, if we were to draw it from the corner, you can see that now I'm able to scale it from the corner, just getting it perfectly able to fit whatever area I'm currently dealing with. So that is GSR reintegrated back into boxcutter. During draw, you can press tab and it will bring you to a dot mode, where you can grab these dots in order to adjust your shape and do fine tuning, like the bevel dot here, where we can bring it into a chamfer, bring it out to a bevel. However, pressing the hotkey of Alt D will make dots disappear, allowing you to be free to just grab this, and rotate it and focus using only the hotkeys of G, S, and R. Whenever you draw a shape and you tab to live, now users will be able to press 1, 3, 7, numpad period to focus on their object while in tab mode, and of course press Alt D to show dots. But now you will be able to look at things exactly as you need to in order to work the way you want. In addition to that, pressing tab, tilde, will bring up the viewport tab where you can actually adjust your view and get that perfect view while you're dealing with your cut and just adjusting things and rotating and making transformations happen. So just letting you know that great care has been taken to make sure that all of these systems behave properly, allowing you to draw shapes and look at it in just the right view, get it positioned, press B to bevel, use hotkeys if you want, and just get to perfect cut every time. Over the course of box cutting, many users have become used to just drawing a shape, extruding it, and then clicking to apply. Of course, you can press hotkeys such as Y to jump to extract, and now we have a custom cutter of this area that we just took out. However, there is now a new mode added called release lock where we can now draw the shape and it will just tab. And if we click again, it will jump to laser cut, allowing us to actually examine laser cut and what it gives us before we actually apply it for the first time ever. And so whenever a release lock was first added, we did not have the jump to laser cut functionality. However, this has unlocked a whole new realm of possibility for allowing users to kind of examine what they're getting with their cutter before they actually send it through. So to show it in action, I just draw a cut and I just click and there's my laser cut. And of course I can still grab these dots to adjust and I can just click to apply. And the system, while it feels a little bit slower, I can assure you just feels so natural and can be quite a fun time, and I recommend for everyone to give it a try. So this mode definitely goes a lot further than just this. If we go under behaviors and we turn on quick execute, you can see that now whenever I draw, it jumps to extrusion and I'm able to modify the shape while it's actually still live. And this allows for a really interesting cookie cutter approach where at any time I could still just press tab and jump to live and make adjustments to this, but we're able to work so fluid compared to previous because we're able to just step through the process and really examine things. And so as we ensured that release lock worked with each behavior, we found that more and more potential was unlocked from this tool to us. So to show it in its non-quick apply state, we just draw a shape. We're exactly where we want. And I just can't get over being able to go to the other side of an object, sit here, look at it, and wait for my train to just come over here and hit me in the face with the red shape of this custom cutter that we just extracted from this. So, you know, this cube's getting pretty crazy, so we'll just draw a box here, press Y to change it to extract, and, you know, we'll just step this through the process very gradually. And so, you know, release lock isn't for those who are, you know, power users who are just trying to get through things quickly. Release lock is more for a draw it out, sit there, think about it, kind of contemplate, and really perfect the boolean that you're getting on the way in, and then of course just click to apply or press spacebar. But release lock has had great care taken to ensure that it works with everything. So here we are drawing another shape here. We press R, Y to rotate, we drag this piece out and just scale it as we need, scale it in, and just get real abstract with this if we want. And that is release lock in a nutshell. So starting off in Hops tool, which is part of hard ops, we'll go ahead and insert a smart box. A smart box is a type of hop shape where you can drop a shape and use dots in order to adjust it to create a wide variety of different sorts of shapes. So we'll go with something like this for our example. And you can see that this box is actually comprised of a myriad of modifiers here. So while we're able to Alt W switch over to box cutter and cut things fine, and we can go and slice things also fine. If we tab back into edit mode, you can see that all these modifiers that creates this box are still in place, which means that this is a rather expensive slice. Apply slices has been enhanced to take advantage of behavior similar to smart apply. So with this piece, you can see all the modifiers here. If we go under Q, operations, and just do smart apply, you can see that everything's applied except for the last bevel and the weighted normal, which are the two modifiers we'd never want applied. So now notice that with this shape and all these modifiers, if we go in here, switch over to slice and cut this, it has received the exact same sort of smart apply behavior. And that is what smart apply in 7.1v is all about. So recut can be a little difficult to explain because, you know, there's a cut and then of course there's a slice. But what if you wanted to cut but slice, but you wanted your slice to be what your cut would have been if it was never cut? Well, pressing Alt X will trigger something called recut while you're in slice, and this will show you exactly what we're trying to go for here, where basically a cut will happen where it's a slice on an unmodified version resulted in a derivative version of a slice that's inserted in the hole. So that could be a little tough to explain, but another way to show this in action is let's just use red box, and we'll just draw a red box here and just do a couple of cuts, and then we will do an inset. And of course inset can be a little bit strange, but if we press Alt X, you can see that there are two types of inset now. This is basically your regular general inset, and this one is the recut, which the recut version isn't actually looking the best in this particular example to, you know, validate its existence. So let's actually delete this cube, and I'll start off with a clean cube, and we'll just demonstrate this one more time. And so now we're creating an inset. And if we give it some thickness, this is what we're dealing with. And if we Alt X, this is basically what recut is. So it's a little difficult to explain, but it's like a different type of cut that actually uses the other types of cuts happening inside of it to give you a different sort of calculation. And so we actually came across this sort of thing by accident. However, it became rapidly apparent. I was like, hey, that thing that you're about to patch out, can I take a look at that? And so we had a bit of an internal discussion on it. Nobody wanted to give it its own color. You know, it could have been orange box. I could have been talking about orange box today. But it definitely comes in handy for situations where, let's say I wanted to draw like a yellow box here. I could press Alt X and actually get back the original shape that I had and just modify it to kind of undo what was formerly there. So in another universe where we're able to just merge geometry to other stuff and just kind of heal things up to just make things look as if it never happened, this would be one of those building blocks as far as making a cutter that basically allows us to negate other cuts and pretend as if these things never happened. So I'm sorry if that's a little bit complex of an explanation for what recut is, but that's probably the best way I could put it after a series of rehearsals. So under knife is an option now called hops mark, which if you have anything specified under the Ctrl tilde area of the hard ops helper as far as your edge markings, whenever you draw a knife cut, it will now be reflected in the surface. So we go in here and you can see that the boundary has been marked, which can be useful for things like quad remesher for forcing edge flows. I hope to go over that more in the future, but just know that in the event that you're using knife, you can check hops mark, and it will allow you to mark the boundary of the box that you're drawing in edit mode or object mode when using knife tool. And this will extend primarily to the boundary. To set up this example, I'll tab in edit mode and right click subdivide a couple of times. And we'll just select some loops and use Q blank material to add a blank material to these areas. And we'll just jump through here, just adding some random materials for this example. You know, we'll make this one glass to be funny, and we'll make this one emission to be even funnier. We'll make this one glass just to make a point. So you can see our shape built up of various different types of materials. And now you can see that we're inside of knife with box. And if I just draw a knife, no more material degradation issues. That issue has been resolved. So sometimes it's just a matter of just being persistent with issues. You can also see here that the interior faces thing is still a thing. So this is, for this reason, release lock is also there to assist, because if you draw a box and you just click to bring it out, you will never deal with the interior face issue. Interior faces with blue box are created from ingot or from boxes going too far out for some reason. You can see here I can actually expose the issue. Once we take this just a centimeter further, it will actually cause issues. So this means that AccuCut's actually better for doing laser cut blue boxes than without it, because if we use it without it, you'll see that that will just simply shoot out into space, possibly increasing the risk for interior blue box action. However, with laser cut, you can rest assured that the box that's being created is form fitted to the shape to the best of our abilities, which sometimes may or may not perform to its best, but is definitely to the best of our ability at this time, and we're always looking forward towards improving it. But having shapes go out too far is a surefire way to create this interior face issue. So as long as you're using boxcutter, definitely keep in mind that this bug exists and we are on the lookout for ways to resolve it. However, AccuCut is our attempt at solving it in the meantime, and I'm happy to announce that Material Cut and Blue Box no longer will destroy materials, so now you can use them without fear, and Blue Box is now just like it used to be, just a blue scythe. And so it goes without saying that if you draw on the surface, you are using a intersect box that is capable of going 3D. However, if you draw off the surface, you are drawing a knife project box, which has a higher chance of just going through and having zero issues. And knife project boxes are drawn by starting off of the surface or using view align mode. So in addition to the myriad of improvements and changes that I went over previously and will be going over past this part, there's been some additional settings added under input for ViewPie. ViewPie is whenever you press the tilde. If you're drawing a shape and you press tilde, you'll be able to adjust your view using the ViewPie in order to look around. Unfortunately, this isn't going to work if you're an international user, but it definitely will work if you have a tilde on your keyboard. In addition to that, there's also an option here for release lock, which as I click it, you can see it actually enabling and disabling in the top bar. So just letting you know that that exists as an option here. Under shape, you can see the additional options that's been added, and I'll be going over these more in depth in the future part of this video. Also, there is Recut, which is right here. But if you're under the slice, Recut is also an option here. And if you're under knife, Hops mark is an option here. So continuing on, you have the option now to turn dots off and on. So by turning this off, I can now draw a shape, pause it, and there won't be dots. And I could just press G, move the shape around. Of course, it's going to move it on the local axis. I'm still asking for ways to get this to work on the view axis, so that may be coming in a future release. But I just wanted to go over some of the UI changes that you can expect with options inside of your dear little behavioral sprocket. Of course, if you want to join our user community, control clicking this will bring you into a browser that will connect you to our Boxcutter Discord, where you can congregate with other users, discuss tips, propose improvements, and all sorts of fun stuff, in addition to just being a member of Box City. So without further ado, let's continue on to the next part. Testing is something that we take quite seriously internally here. And so the lead up to this release has been mainly a testing process where I've tested things most rigorously and tried to point out all the bugs that I could locate and offer to get them resolved, because bugs are things that I take especially hard because they impact the user experience and makes them lose confidence in their ability to get to the end of a project, you know, if you're getting Python errors. So there was one particular nasty error where you would delete a box, and then if you drew a box, it would not happen. It would instead throw an error. So that's actually been resolved, and I am particularly sorry about that bug existing. Bugs are something that I take quite seriously and bring up on a daily basis, because there's something that we definitely don't want as part of the experience, but they are par for the course. Another cool way of working in Blender is taking a face and pressing Ctrl H and just adding a hook as a new object. And with that, you're able to move an empty in order to adjust a shape using hooks. And special care was taken this release in order to ensure that we are compatible with hooks, because this is a classic workflow that I've always been a fan of and have been experimenting with for years, and would hate to lose any sort of that funness. So just know that if you are the type of person to experiment with hooks, just know that we have taken great care to ensure that hooks are now compatible with boxcutter, and you should be able to use them without any issue. In previous iterations of boxcutter, there was a button added inside of behaviors called apply scale. And this is on by default, which meant that if you were to scale something in object mode and then go inside of edit mode and begin doing boxcutter things like knife or cutting, that the scale would automatically get applied. There was a mistake where the scale would actually get applied without you asking for it. And so just know that special care was taken to ensure that now you're able to cut in edit mode despite the scale being applied, and now apply scale behaves as it was intended. Additional options have been added in the behavior panel under shape. You can choose the rotate axis, which our default is set to the local Z. And also you can set the array axis, which you won't be needing in the future. However, it's there for now just as a formality. So just to show rotate Z on default, we create a shape and press R, and it will rotate in increments of 5 because that's what our rotation parameter is set to, or actually 15 here. So now we'll actually rotate at 30. But if we go and mess with the array axis, we can change where it starts at. Then when you press V, it's actually starting on the Y, but you can always press X to change it. In fact, array has actually changed where, because of rotate being mapped to R, you can now press Shift R to do the reset behavior. So if your array's out of control, you can just press Shift R and that will actually bring it back into range. So you still do have the ability to reset your array. If the array gets kind of you can get things back under control. So just letting you know to check out some of the options added under the behavior panel under shape, because there may be an option here that you've been waiting for. Circle has also received some improvements. So if we just start off drawing a circle here, and we get in here and use our snap dots to create a smaller circle and create a smaller circle and create a smaller circle, and maybe go into orthographic because it's just going to only get weirder. Alt V to look at it in HQ so we can see some good shading here, and we'll take this in, and you can see that right here circle breaks down. However, in the scale that we're looking at here, this is actually in relation to the modifier in place here, and more than likely we actually just hotline, so we can actually go even further. So let's actually do that. So we're making another circle here, except now it looks like the normals are being a little crazy. So now we're at the level where we're triggering repeat. But if we zoom back out, you can see that there's been improvements made to circle to make it more capable of working at even smaller scales. This is something that, we don't actively support. We don't particularly care about making the smallest circles known to man, because the weld modifier is just a cruel mistress. If we draw a shape here and we choose to keep spin, we can actually see the circle live with all the modifiers in place. So this thing's a screw, a decimate, and a weld. And if we turn this off, we can actually scale this thing down. You can see that right now my origin point is set to bounding box center. We can change that to center, and let's draw that shape again. Actually, let's draw it, but shift to live. So here we are with our origin in the correct place this time. And we're just going to scale that in, apply to scale, scale it in, apply to scale, scale it in, apply to scale, scale it in, lose our object, but we'll scale it in, apply our scale, and now you can see that weld is actually beginning to dissolve the shape itself. So if we turn weld off, you can see that weld is the culprit. And so great care has been taken to make sure that weld is small enough to accommodate the circles that are being created. But just letting you know that if weld does become an issue because you're working at microscopic scales trying to make a hair, that these are the reasons why. And Blender itself isn't really a big fan of you creating geometry the size of hairs, but just know that because of customer complaints and things like that, that we've taken great care to ensure that you can cut the size of follicles. So when drawing any shape, pressing Z will toggle you over to Inset, and pressing T will allow you to adjust the thickness. Previously, there was a case where whenever you shift to live, the wrong shape would be selected. That has actually been improved, where now you can shift to live and say press Alt W to switch over to Hops tool, and even use Hops dots to adjust the modifiers after the fact whenever it comes to creating an inset. So we'll just create another inset. Just draw a shape, shift to live, press T, and we'll shift it to live, Alt W, grab this dot, and just adjust solidify to our heart's content. Of course, solidify has issues when it comes to geometry getting to interior. However, it also is worth explaining that Inset also supports Recut as well, which can result in some rather interesting experiences. So here I am lowering the inset to get it to somewhere more understandable. And then we hold shift to shift it to live, press Alt W, switch over to Hops tool, and here we're able to adjust it. So when it comes to Inset, due to how it works with solidifying the underlying mesh, it isn't the best case to do it with more complex meshes. However, the more isolated an area is with Inset and the more straightforward the geometry is as far as thickening inward, the more predictable you are at getting acceptable results. Like for example, I know that I can probably do just one more cut here and shift it to live, and we'll switch over to Hops tool and just mess with the dot. But you can see that the dots get more and more fickle, where there's only certain numerical ranges where it can work. In fact, when I pull it right here, you can see that maybe if I have the weld in there, just kind of work in those interior corners, or even if I set up the solidify to use complex as a system instead of simple, we could have taken things a little bit further. But just letting you know that shift to live has been improved with Inset in boxcutter 7.1v. Backspace with Ngon had become an area of contention for me inside of boxcutter, so thankfully Proxe has completed some fixes to make Ngon better with Backspace. So we'll just quickly draw a quick little shape here with our little Ngon. And let's say, oh no, I need to go back some points. Well, I could just press Backspace, 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 and Backspace all the way as far as I need to in order to get the point that I need to. In fact, I made a mistake there. Let's backspace that, and now we can get the shape exactly as we want. With release lock on, we're able to drop this into a pause state where I can then extrude it out. Mirror has also received some improvements where if you draw a shape and press 1 and press 1 again, you can remove mirror as well as add mirror. You can now draw a mirror on either side and press 1 and 1 again to remove without having to press it multiple times, or press shift 1. So now mirror has been consolidated and simplified to its simplest form. However, you can still press shift 1 if needed, and if you were, for example, trying to flip it on the X side. However, you also have 2 and 3 as well, and numpad also works. But that's only if you turn on emulate numpad. But just letting you know that mirror has received some improvements inside of boxcutter to make it easier for you to do your mirroring without a whole lot of fuss. Taking this cube, and we'll just press Q and go under mesh tools and hit it with a sphere cast. And I'll press Ctrl 4 to add more levels of subdivision and use the Ctrl D Helper to set smooth. With our cube, we'll look at it from side view, and with boxcutter, we'll just begin drawing an Ngon shape. And just cut through, press Z, convert to Inset, and we can press T to adjust the amount of thickness and click to apply. We'll look at this back from side view, draw a box shape, and cut across, and maybe even put a piece in the center here, rotate it 45 degrees and mirror that across and below using hops. And here we are with our starting shape here. So Recut is a feature that is similar to Slice. So we draw a box. We could also start off in Slice, but I am always used to pressing hotkeys to switch. And this is basically what you get with Slice. If we press Alt-X, you can see that now I actually got back what was taken away from this via the cuts that we did previously. And mirror has also been improved, so I could press 1, 2, and 3 in order to mirror on X, Y, and Z, and now toggling should behave as intended. So now we're able to recut and get back the original mesh that we lost while also Slice integrating it into the surface. So Recut is a type of mod behavior. So if we go under Slice, you can see that Slice has a recut toggle, which means that if I go in here and select this shape and just basically do a slice, it will just jump into the recut status. And so this is something that you can use to your advantage when it comes to cutting shapes out and getting back things that you have previously lost. So when working sometimes in boxcutter, the view alignment can become unwieldy. So for that reason, we added Shift V so that you can change your alignment options on the fly. So if we want to draw from object, we can just look at this and just draw using object. Click to go to laser cut, click to apply. However, we can go to orthographic, press Shift V, jump to view mode, and quickly just draw a view aligned cut. And we can just jump between these without any problem just by pressing Shift V. You can always be in control of your orientation to get the perfect shape that you need every time. So release lock here has a additional feature where if you shift click, it will toggle the laser cut lock as well. You won't see anything visually here. However, if you go under the settings, you'll see that under input, we have release lock and we have laser cut lock. So you can actually shift click this to check them both, or you can just click it off and on and it'll just keep the same parameters that you have. So I just want to demonstrate this just regular and then with laser cut lock. So if you click without extruding out, it will jump out into what we call laser cut, which is where it attempts to extrude through the form. However, there is an additional mode where if you shift click it, you can just draw it, click, and it will just go into the applied state and just apply. In this case, my fade time's a little high because I missed the fade. However, just clicking and applying is another way to approach it, and AR finds this to be optimal for tablet use. However, in my misinterpretation of it, I felt that this was a mode where we could draw it, pause it on laser cut, look at laser cut and kind of talk about what it is, bring things up, press T to add solidification, press G to move things around, click to apply, and just really think about things. In fact, we'll draw another cut here and we'll just think about what we want to do here. Next thing I want to do is extrude. I want to press Y in order to change this into an extraction. And just by either clicking or pressing spacebar, I can extract this area and then reuse it here, where I can sit here and actually think about the shape I've drawn out and what I want to do with it going forward. So in this case, I want to click in order to extrude it out through to the other side. However, maybe I want to scale it up and try to get something even more unique. So right here, I'm scaling it to just play with the result here. We'll just click to apply and go and look at the back and just try this again. And so release lock has unlocked a whole new way of approaching boxcutter for people who want to just kind of step through the process and think about things and how they approach it to just kind of come up with something more specific, more refined. And so, you know, even with this area, I can just draw a box, pause it, bring it down, Y, change it to extract this area, and then use this as the custom cutter for refining this area, using the whole form as a guide of sorts. And I know this cube's been destroyed, but the case in point is that, you know, release lock extends to everything, whether you're using snap dots in order to start with your shape. You can just bring it in, pause it, and just think about what it is that you're trying to do with things before progressing forward with your shape. Holding Control will now hide dots. So we draw the shape out, you can see the dots. If I hold Control, the dots are gone. If we extrude the shape out, you can see the dots for bevel, offset, and extrude. If I hold Control, the dots are gone. So this is just to help with some pass-through behavior, but also makes boxcutter feel a little bit more smooth in use. In fact, right here, I'm wondering where's my draw dot, which is right here. And that one is my favorite dot to use for adjusting these shapes post extrusion. So I've talked a lot about release lock, and I hope to talk more about it in the future, but release lock is closely tied with quick execute and is also closely tied with laser cut lock. So whenever you have quick execute on, you can kind of get this whole ray of God kind of cutting mode where you can just cut completely through the model. And this is something that I just can't get enough of. It kind of fell into our laps by accident as we began working on refining the logic for every behavior to connect with each other as we added these systems to boxcutter. And you can always, of course, pause this, tab into edit mode, grab the shape, and move it and do all the things you would normally do. But being able to draw a shape and see it instantly go into laser cut and examine what you have is basically what this release has been all about. So I do hope that everyone enjoys this latest release of boxcutter and gives everything a try. So one way I like to work in boxcutter is just drawing a shape, doing my usual box cuts, just working aside, just kind of being random, seeing what I get, and then of course, drawing, pressing T to solidify, and then of course drawing a cut and extracting things out, and then repeating those extractions in other areas to like kind of get something really random and see what kind of gifts you can get from the booleans that you've seeded it. But I would also like to duplicate that and make it, or not duplicate, make another cube, and then use custom cutter, press C to switch, make that the custom cutter, and then use that shape to actually cut additional variants. And I would do this over and over, just kind of taking things on different paths, pressing C to make that the custom cutter, and just using that one as the custom cutter, and just doing that over and over, just kind of experimenting with the possibility of getting different results. In fact, we'll press C, I'll snap my cursor there, and we'll bring out another cube, and we'll play with that cutter that we've created here. And as we go, we'll get more and more interesting results here. So I'm snapping my cursor here, pressing C to make this shape the custom cutter. And because I'm using Ctrl Alt Spacebar mode, I see that there's not a notification bar at the bottom, so we may need to do something about that in order to make our quiet mode just quiet. So I'll select this, press Alt H, and we'll just go in here, just get random with it, and do a cut here, also get random. And thanks to things like Recut, like right here, a cut didn't work out, so I could press G to move it, and then double click to apply that. But because of Recut, I can draw a cut, bring it down, press X to turn it into a slice, press Alt X to turn it into a recut, and cut back what I lost originally from this shape, from all the custom cut action. So we're still trying to figure out ways to integrate this into the workflow and make it more fluid. However, at this time, it is something that is worth experimenting with, because once you're able to do stuff like this, we'll go ahead and click on apply booleans in order to just quickly grab these, bevel them, mirror it across, and we can just begin getting random with this again and begin cutting. And we can switch back over to custom cutter and just draw a cut right here, bring it in, and it's just instant detail. And right here we can do the same thing. We can press S, X, scale it, press G, move it out. So with that, I believe we can finally wrap up the demonstration for this latest release of boxcutter 7.1v. And I hope everyone enjoys it, reports their bugs, lets us know of any issues that you experience. And by all means, have fun. So to end this video, we'll go through a tool test of boxcutter just to kind of show you guys how I test boxcutter. So I scaled this cube out by 2, and we're just going to do a series of cuts here. Some of my favorite cuts of late, which is just bring in cylinders across, pressing J to convert them to be join. In fact, let me turn on my screencast keys so they can be displaying. We'll press D, switch over to box, and just start cutting some boxes in here as well. And we'll Alt X mirror it to the other side. Maybe cut an additional box inside like so. Maybe one right here, G, Z, Y in order to bring it up, G to move it over, and just grab just fits so naturally back in the workflow. So I'm so glad to see it back. So right here, I'm just going to draw a box, but I'll press Y in order to do an extraction. And so you won't see what happens, but an extraction is now on the cutter's collection. I'll press Alt H. We can see the result of the extraction right here. And if I press Alt X, we can mirror this over to the other side, getting us the result that we want here. And the next thing that I want to do is Ctrl A, Visual Geometry to Mesh, and we will go ahead and dice this. So I'm going to press 3 and then Q in order to change the algorithm from knife project to mesh intersect inside of hard ops. And we'll just do a quick knife project, and we'll just delete these faces on the end here and mirror that to the other side using a mirror modifier. And that'll just set us up for us to use Twist 360 and get us something just like this. So to end this video, all we have to do is insert a sphere, give this a sphere cast, we'll up this to 4, and set smooth, and we'll just scale this piece in. Of course, we're working on the cutter collection, so we'll need to move this back to the regular collection. But if we run a difference, you can see that things get a little bit hairy. Until finally they do not. So if we lower the auto smooth amount, we can kind of see what I was going for here. We can also see that the edges are just getting a little bit broken up. So just by going in and adding another level to the subdiv modifier, we can actually give this just a little bit more life for us to choke out of it with the work that we're trying to do. However, if we take a look at this, more than likely we may want to rotate this 90 and just kind of experiment with varying types of result here. Maybe something like this. And we'll look at this in top view and actually grab this and just bring it out. And now when we scale it in, we can see that we are cutting pipes into this shape. So I can actually just rotate this and you can see the result that I was going for here. In fact, if I just draw a box and we cut this top part off, of course, this is some heavy poly working here. You can see that we've created this really interesting cylindrical piece that has this piping cut into it. And so this is a fun way to kind of get started testing things with boxcutter and just having fun with extraction and getting started. And then of course from here we can bring out a join box, press B. For now we can have confidence that whenever I press spacebar to apply, that the bevel will be facing the correct side. We previously had a glitch that was causing issues there, and so I'm happy to announce that that has been resolved. Of course, you the customers are always the ones finding exciting additional glitches to keep our lives exciting. So I do look forward to what y'all point out to us as far as what will need to be improved in the future. I'm always looking forward to the ideas that come forth from you, the users, and also what comes next with these subsequent updates. So right here, instead of taking it all the way out the other side, we'll press 1 in order to mirror it on the X. And instead of bringing it all the way there, I like to bring it almost there and leave it with just enough room to slap a hole in this thing. And I just wanted to take you guys through the process of kind of how I've been experimenting with boxcutter and cutting into curve forms, because getting cutters to deform to a surface is something that I'm still very interested in. However, you know, by the time that we ever try to accomplish it, I want it to be a easy one-stop solution that doesn't require a whole lot of input or additional parameter surfing. So I think after this cut, we can go ahead and mirror this to the other side and wrap this thing up. And I think I got the point across, and I hope you guys enjoy this latest release, and I'll see you guys next time.
Boxcutter.